Our Maltipoo went from barking and whining when we left home to peacefully sleeping while we're gone. Here's how. Hi, I'm Julia. This is Rosco the Maltipoo, and here are 5 tips for easing your dog's separation anxiety. Just a quick disclaimer before we jump into the video, I'm sharing tips that helped Rosco's anxiety. He didn't experience the level of anxiety that some dogs do, so just keep in mind that some of the advice I'm sharing might not be as effective for some dogs. First things first, what is separation anxiety and how do you know if your dog has it? If your dog is distressed when you leave, barks and whines, gets into mischief and has potty accidents, then he likely has separation anxiety. My parents just went in the store, so that's why he's going nuts. He has bad separation anxiety, clearly. We've been trying to train him and help his separation anxiety not to be so severe, but separation anxiety can be a result of many things. It could be because your dog's experienced trauma in the past or switched owners, or like Rosco, it could be just a trait of the breed. Maltipoos are notorious for being very attached to their owners, which can translate in separation anxiety. It's worth noting that if you are concerned, it's always worth consulting your vet just to rule out any medical concerns. So tip number 1 is to drain your dog's energy before you leave home. I don't know about your dog, but Rosco is very energetic. He loves playing fetch and going for walks. And when he has a lot of energy, everything is accentuated, especially his anxiety. So before you leave, take your dog outside, play a quick game of fetch or anything that's gonna tire him out. We found that when we left Rosco home and he hadn't had any physical activity, he got more energetic and feisty. But once we tired him out, he was able to relax a bit more and didn't experience those emotions so fiercely. This is also really important to prevent your dog from getting into mischief when you leave. And who knows, he might just fall asleep. Additionally, when you're outside, make sure your dog goes to the bathroom just so you avoid any potty accidents. We usually like to take Rosco out one last time before we leave home. In my opinion, tip number 2 is the most important part of the video, and that is to free roam, don't crate. Now, depending on your situation, this might be a little difficult, but we noticed a drastic change in Rosco's behavior once we stopped locking him in a crate when we left. The act of physically locking Rosco in his crate just escalated his nerves so much. For one, his crate was way too small to leave him in for a long time. The crate made him feel trapped and claustrophobic, and it just escalated all the anxiety he was already facing with us leaving. We wanted to make the experience as positive as we could for Rosco, so we decided to take away the crate and try free roaming. So we basically puppy-proofed a space in our home. We gated off the stairs and any other areas he might go into and get into mischief. We made sure to pick up any shoes or loose cords or anything that was a chewing hazard. Then we put out toys, food, and water for him and his dog bed so he could take a nap. This made Rosco so much more comfortable. I think it really has to do with the fact that it was an environment very similar to what he lives with when we're all at home. So having that familiarity really helped his nerves. I wanted to add here that even if you still decide to leave your dog in a crate when you leave, that doesn't mean his separation anxiety is impossible to overcome. With proper crate training, it's possible. We tried crate training at first, and even though Rosco was totally fine sleeping in a crate when we were all there at night, when it came to leaving him home alone in one, it was an entirely different story. In our case, we found it easier to just let him free roam. Tip number 3 is to use distractions and stimulation. Before you leave the house, prepare a Kong with peanut butter, or lay out a bully stick, or fill a treat maze and put it out for your dog. Anything that's going to be exciting and new and maybe tasty. Not only will this be exciting for your dog, but it will take their mind off of the fact that you're leaving. When we did this, it distracted him long enough for us to sneak out the door. Doing this is also important because your dog can begin to associate you being gone with a special toy or treat. If these tips are being helpful to you thus far, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give this video a paw up to help it to spread to more people. Why did I just do this? Tip number 4 is to make leaving the house a regular habit. Let's face it, leaving the house shouldn't be a special occasion. Ideally, you should be doing it all the time. And this was one of our biggest mistakes when it comes to Rosco's separation anxiety. We were so afraid to leave him home because we'd seen the traces of separation anxiety in him that we just didn't do it at all. But in the long run, repetition was what really helped to ease Rosco's anxiety. So to do this, we practiced going in and out of the house for short periods of time and very often. I recommend bringing treats with you so that when you come back in the house, you can give your dog a treat and praise him. Keep in mind to never scold your dog if he acts up when you leave. You want to make it as positive as you can. If you live with someone else, another way you can do this is to have one of you go outside and one of you stay in. So for example, my dad would go outside, I'd have treats with Rosco inside, and I'd be treating him and praising him when he was quiet and when he paid attention to me. This adds extra reinforcement for the time that you're away. You don't have to do this, but we added words to this. Whenever we left the house, we'd tell Rosco, "We'll be back." See, he knows it.
I'll be back, Rosco.
And then when we'd come back, we'd say, "Yes, Rosco, we told you we'd be back." And then eventually he began to associate that, and it just added some reassurance that we're always going to come back. Now, I understand that if your dog has a severe case of separation anxiety, you can't expect to just leave him home very often and it to be magically cured. If this describes your dog, then you just have to take it in baby steps. The way you can do this is, for example, if your dog goes hysterical when you take a step towards the door, or if you grab the keys, then practice taking a step towards the door and immediately rewarding your dog. And then grabbing the keys, jingling them, and then giving your dog a snack. This just serves as good desensitization. And then if your dog starts going hysterical, then you just gotta back up and take it in baby steps again. Now, originally I didn't have this next tip in here. I just kept it to 5 tips, but I wanted to add this one because I thought it was very important as well. And that is to practice in different places. Let me show you what I mean by this. Rosco's separation anxiety isn't restricted to just when we leave the house. In fact, it translates to a lot of other areas, like the car, or my grandparents' house, or even outside. This is why it's important to always be looking for opportunities that you can help your dog's anxiety. So for example, one time my dad was gonna go shopping in a hardware store, and I decided to bring treats with me. This way, when he went in the store and I stayed in the car with Rosco, I could be treating him and helping his anxiety. Like normal, Rosco started whining hysterically when my dad left, but if there was ever a pause or a gap in the whining, I'd immediately praise him and give him a snack. And eventually the whining slowed down.
Rosco, look at me. Rosco. Yes, quiet. Yes, Rosco, yes. Rosco. Rosco. Yes, quiet. Yes, quiet.
Another example is we often leave Rosco home at my grandparents' house. Not only does this help prepare him for the times we leave him there for overnight when we're on trips, but also by switching up the location, it gives Rosco security that we'll always be back no matter where we leave him. So tip number 6 is something that we did for a little while that we actually found to be quite helpful. We often wondered when we left the house, does Rosco whine for a long time after we leave? Does he eventually settle down? What does he do while we're away? To do this, we videoed on my dad's computer. We just set it up in the place where we were leaving Rosco, and we had it there when we left so we could go and watch it when we got back. You could invest in some camera like a Furbo that is specialized for doing this, but I don't think it's necessary. You can just do a video just fine. So when we got back and reviewed the footage, we were actually really reassured. For the first 2 minutes, Rosco was whining, but then he eventually settled down and got distracted with his Kong, and then eventually went to sleep. This can also show you if your dog's getting into any mischief or if you've failed to puppy-proof certain areas. And it can be a good tool to know if the toys and treats you laid out are successfully distracting your dog. We only did this like 5 times, but it was enough to tell us that we were on the right track and Rosco was doing great. Separation anxiety can be a pretty discouraging thing. When Rosco was a puppy, we felt like we couldn't leave him home alone, and this really limited what we could do. But after a while, we realized we couldn't take him everywhere we go, and so we decided we need to start working on his anxiety. And let me tell you, it turned out his anxiety wasn't as impossible to overcome as we originally thought. Okay, maybe not overcome, but Rosco's anxiety is certainly way less severe than it used to be. Flash forward to present day, and Rosco can stay home alone up to 6 hours just fine, and he pretty much naps the whole time. When we leave, he no longer whines or waits at the door or goes crazy. In fact, he'll just stay sleeping. He doesn't even care when we leave anymore. Then when we come home and he hears the door, he'll come running down and greet us really happily. I'm going to suggest that you go watch this video next, where I share 5 training mistakes that we made. It's packed with information, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!